I'm Asher Miller.
I'm Rob Dietz.
And I'm Jason Bradford. Welcome to Crazy Town, where Ice Ice Baby by Vanilla Ice has been declared the new national anthem.
Some key understandings here in Crazy Town. The Earth is finite. The economy cannot grow forever. Physics, chemistry, and biology are real. Healthy humans need community, and it's more fun to laugh than to cry. But where did principles like these originate? Today, we're using the format of a fantasy football draft to pick the pundits who most influenced our thinking. Like starry-eyed fanboys, we gush over our heroes and tell behind-the-scenes stories about how they influenced us. Hey, Jason. Hey, Asher. How's it going today?
It's raining a little bit. I feel like the weather's finally starting to move into autumn, which I have mixed feelings about.
I have mixed feelings. I really like the rain. I really like the fact that I'm not going to have to do as much farm work.
Lazy ass.
I'm getting tired.
Well, that's good. I mean, if you don't have to do as much farm work, you can spend more time following influencers.
Oh,
Or becoming an influencer, maybe.
there we go.
I mean, you got all the ingredients for it.
That's
I wonder
right.
what category of influencer I would be, right?
Golf cart farming, I
There
thought.
we go.
You have that TikTok account, right?
I don't even
Golf
have a
cart
tick.
farming?
I don't. I should get that.
Yeah. Well, so our discussion today is about influencers, kind of the good kind. But as usual, I want to start us off with something bad, okay? So I found a website called Social Pilot that ranks the world's biggest influencers. And I would like you guys to open a tab on your little laptop there
Okay.
so you can see who the top social media influencers in the world
I
are.
could just tell you that the picture that they chose for the headline just makes me want to close this.
Yeah, and I just accepted all the cookies. So
Yep, you're going to be getting all kinds of awesome ads. So let me just read you guys some of the tops here. We got Cristiano Ronaldo at the
sure.
top.
Soccer player.
Yeah,
Sure.
footballer. We got Selena Gomez.
Wait, you got to tell us how many.
Oh, how many followers? Yeah, on 836 million followers for
And
Cristiano.
the total global human population is what?
8 billion.
billion.
So,
Like a tenth of.
yeah.
What?
Yeah, 10% of the population is influenced by Mr. Ronaldo.
Hope he's a good guy.
He's
Then you
playing
got
soccer for the Saudis. Okay, go ahead.
you got Selena Gomez,
Singer.
You've got Mr. Beast.
YouTube personality.
Yeah, his real name I guess is Jimmy Donaldson. Still
Okay.
with 500 million followers.
Okay.
Number 4, Lionel Messi.
Another soccer player.
Yeah,
So
footballer.
Messi, this is inverted because Messi is a better soccer player, but apparently Ronaldo
Not as
has
good
more.
an influencer.
Yeah, exactly.
not.
So who's the better human? I mean, that's,
Okay, fair enough.
you got Justin Bieber.
A Canadian singer. He's really
Has
good.
he put anything out?
He's Canadian.
I think he
music-wise?
has. I think he's still active.
Okay.
Kylie Jenner, The Rock.
Wait. Kylie Jenner is
She's one of the Kardashians.
she's a Kardashian.
If you were gonna say what Kylie Jenner does for a living, you'd say influencer.
well, that's the thing. I was I didn't know who she
Like a
was
job
because
title.
she has nothing going for her except influenization.
It's a lot going for her then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then you got The Rock.
Yep.
You got Taylor Swift, Ariana Grande,
Yep.
Kim Kardashian. So
I'm seeing athletes. I'm seeing
Musicians.
people who are famous for being famous. I'm seeing some musicians.
Mm-hmm.
well, that is to me the best part of this. It's like
No politicians. Interesting.
like why we're following footballers other than to watch them kick soccer balls. Do I really care what Ronaldo's opinion is?
All right. Okay. This is it's kind of depressing, actually.
Yeah, and as you said, Asher, the ones who are famous for being famous are probably the best category.
There's 2 Kardashians on this.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to turn.
I love that. But I love this website talking about brand collaborations. Like
Right.
it lists all the corporations that they're in bed with in their influencing. There's a lot of cosmetics and stuff in here.
You have to get paid to be doing influential things.
I
Right?
don't see any environmental World Wildlife Fund. I'm not seeing a collaboration there. Are you? No.
No.
Well, you're pointing out the way that these people haven't been real influential on the whole crazy town vibe, the whole ethos, the sustainability.
Well, they've been
ethics.
influential. They're helping us, go deeper and deeper into crazy town, I would say.
Well, I thought it would be cool to turn this around and talk about the actual influencers of Crazy Town.
Oh, and we can look up what they rank.
Yes.
Like 300 followers.
Like your top sustainability influencer, which corporations they're in bed with. Which ones are selling John Deere tractors and Coca-Cola?
Well, they're green. They're green tractors.
Right. They are green.
They are green. They paint them green.
Yeah.
So let me explain the rules of how we're doing this.
All right.
We had a Museum of Crazy Town episode a while back. We're kind of going to emulate that. It's a fantasy football draft. We're going to go round robin. Each of us gets to pick an influencer that shaped the way we view the world. However, we've set it up here where there's a rule for each round. So round one has to be somebody that you know or knew or have worked with in your life.
Yep.
Round two can be a pundit who you've never met. So somebody that you've read or read about. This could be like somebody really old like Marcus Aurelius and Stoic philosophy, right?
Yes.
I've met him.
Or could be someone, you've met him. Okay, I'm starting to wonder about what's going on here. So round three then is somebody, could be real or fictitious from pop culture. Okay, so you could get Snoop Dogg or you could get Snoopy, Charlie Brown's dog.
Ariana Grande.
Or Ariana Grande's dog.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who probably has its own influencer account.
Yeah.
Okay, couple more rules. If someone steals your draft pick, tough shit. You got to get another draft pick, just like a real draft.
Got it.
And we've determined or predetermined the order of today's selection with rock, paper, scissors, which, of course, I dominated. Jason, you're a decent rock, paper, scissors player. And Asher, you're terrible at that
I don't know what rocks are or scissors or paper.
He just throws paper every time.
I throw a middle finger every time.
Okay, let's dive into our pundits draft. Round one, somebody you've worked or met with. And since I'm going first, anybody who's listened to this podcast, this won't be a big surprise, but my number one pick here is Herman Daly.
We all knew
We're
this.
shocked.
Just a little bit about Herman. He had a long career in which you could kind of sum it up as the father of ecological economics. I would say that among his many insights, the key idea that he put out there was the idea of a steady state economy, right? So instead of having a continuously growing economy, consuming more shit, instead of growing throughput forever, you would stop the growth of the economy at a sustainable scale. And of course, that's going to require that we think about how we distribute resources, preferably in a fair way rather than exploiting the hell out of each other. Herman's idea of uneconomic growth has always stuck with me. This idea that you can grow the economy to where it's costing you more than it's worth. I actually worked with him back when I worked at the Fish and Wildlife Service. I knew a guy named Brian Check, who is probably the agitator in chief for promoting Herman's ideas. He started an organization called the Center for the Advancement of the Steady State Economy. And I was the first executive director of this,
That's when we met.
organization.
You were doing that.
Yeah. Well, before taking that job, I went with Brian to a conference. We went to the U.S. Society of Ecological Economics. We were presenting a paper that he and I had worked on together. And Herman was there. And I met him. And it turned out he had a book for sale in the lobby of that conference.
Did you get an autograph?
Well, I did not. The textbook on ecological economics,
you are a nerd. You bought a textbook
It's the
not
weirdest
because
thing.
you were going to a class.
So I bought it and I read it cover to freaking cover.
Yeah.
It's written by Herman and also Josh Farley.
Yeah, that's a great textbook.
He's a friend of ours and kind of actually hit my heart because I had taken economics in college. That was my major.
Yeah.
And it never made much sense. And I wasn't smart enough to put my finger on why. But then I get that book and I read it and I'm like, where was this? Why?
I am sure it's on my shelf here. It came out in like 2002, I think. I'm pretty close to the right year.
Yeah, that's right. Sometime around then. I remember that conference, I think, was in 05 or 04, something like that. So I read ecological economics, and 2 years later, I quit my job at the Fish and Wildlife Service, took over this unfunded nonprofit, Cassie, and got Herman on the board. And my biggest triumph with him, is I convinced him to let us use his name for our blog, which we called the Daily News.
Oh, that's great.
D-A-L-Y.
Oh, that's so clever.
Yeah, I mean, brilliant. But see, he didn't want to because he was such
He's a humble
person.
Humble guy.
I really think meeting and learning about his work just changed my career completely. Like a totally different way to go.
Now, Rob, you were just involved in this new podcast series that's been produced. So maybe you just tell our listeners about that. Because, hearing about Herman's life to me was really interesting. His origin story and his work. And I thought they did a good job at that.
Yeah, for sure. The podcast is called Cities 1.5. It's kind of about how cities are dealing with climate and trying to change things. But they recorded a 5-part mini-series called Going Steady with Herman Daly.
Oh, that's so cute.
Jesus.
Like holding hands.
And I actually appear on it, so try to avoid those episodes or those parts of episodes. But what's really cool is a colleague of ours, Peter Victor, actually wrote a kind of a biographical book about Herman called Herman Daly's Economics for a Full World. Mm-hmm. And before Herman passed away, he sat down to do a bunch of interviews with him. And so Peter's got bunches of tape on Herman. And you get to hear his voice in this podcast, which is really cool. It's kind of from beyond the grave and learning about how he came to what he came to. And one of the key points there that, besides the economics and the logical stuff is he was really a person of character, willing to stand up for the truth.
Yeah.
To keep speaking truth to power, even though it was beating on him and messing up his career. But he really questioned himself. I was listening to an episode. He's like, everybody seemed to not buy into this idea that you can't grow the economy forever. So I kept asking myself, am I wrong? Am I right? And he was looking for himself to be wrong, but he just wasn't.
Right.
I could totally relate to that.
Yeah. Okay, so Herman is my number one draft pick. So let's move on to you, Jason. Who's your top pundit that you've ever worked with?
I'm going back in time. Like, this is when I was young and impressionable, and I wasn't completely jaded. So I'm deciding I want to go to grad school, and I found this guy in St. Louis. His name is Alwyn Gentry. And Alwyn Gentry was probably the most renowned botanist in the world at the time. And we're talking the early 90s. I ended up being his student. And he invented what's called the Gentry forest transects. And what he was renowned for was being able to go into like these super diverse tropical forests. And so here, if you go to like a forest in Missouri, like an oak hickory forest, and you were to like say, well, how many species of trees are in this forest? You might get 35, okay? You go down to like the Amazon, you're going to get 350. And the problem is that botanists were typically collecting specimens that were flowering or fruiting, they're called fertile. And Gentry realized that most of the time I'm out here, most things are not in flower or fruit. How do I even know what's here, right? So understanding on a local level what's going on with diversity. So he developed this whole system for identifying plants without the reproductive characteristics and published books on this and developed the techniques. And so we ended up getting a picture of the diversity of tropical forests that we never had before. He revolutionized how we look at tropical forests and understand their patterns of diversity. I geeked out about this and was his student and really wanted to sort of do this kind of work. He unfortunately died in a plane crash with some other wonderful scientists. And it was really heartbreaking because these guys were phenomenal biologists and they were transforming the way we understood the world. So that was quite a loss. But he made me want to do this kind of work. It was very exciting.
I got to say, I had never heard of Al Gentry other than you mentioning him in passing, but I would have been mildly interested in his work, probably like, oh, okay, yeah, cool, doing conservation biology in the Amazon.
Yeah.
But the fact that you became geek number one, like really jonesing to go out and figure out, okay, yeah, let me go down to the Amazon and figure this out.
Well, he did this all over. So he sort of started in the Amazon, but he would go in the Andes. He would like go latitudinal. So he tried to make these transects a standard method where you could sample vegetation anywhere in the world. It was a forest. And it was he could compare then. He had this great publication where he was comparing forests from around the world. He went to Africa. He went to Southeast Asia. He went to Australia. He would go down to, he would do stuff in North America. So he had all these transects, and it was in a couple days, he could get a sense of things.
And like Ronaldo, like Gomez, like Messi, that, probably 500 million people have read that publication.
Yeah, what's interesting is he died before all this, the internet even got big, and people don't know about him unless you are in this sort of realm.
Well, I appreciate hearing about him, but it also it's like a poignant reminder to me that there are all these unsung people who are advancing science or understanding out there whose names we'll never recognize. I think we see this more and more, I think, recently, where we're going back in time and realizing the wife of this person that we herald is actually, hugely involved in this discovery or this invention or whatever, and I think it's just important for us to try to name some of those people who are largely invisible to us.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, let's get to you, Asher. Your first round.
You guys are both describing people that you worked with. This is a person I did not work with, but have met, so technically fits in the category.
Okay.
And that's Naomi Klein.
Oh.
So Naomi is a Canadian writer. She's a professor. She's been an activist. She's probably best known for her book, The Shock Doctrine, The Rise of Disaster Capitalism, which was published in 2007. She's published a lot of books on climate change, systems change, politics, including the book, This Changes Everything, Capitalism versus the Climate in 2014. Naomi comes from a family, a multi-generational family with ties to progressive and feminist movements. Her grandparents were actually card-carrying members of the American Communist Party. Her parents emigrated to Canada in 1967 as part of the Vietnam War protest resistance movement. Her father was active with Physicians for Social Responsibility. Her mother was a filmmaker, a very publicly outspoken feminist. So Naomi comes from this multi-generational family of rabble-rouser activist types on the progressive end. I will say, I think the last time I spoke with Naomi was, I reached out to her because I was dismayed that she was basically touting these plans that Mark Jacobson, who we've talked about before, had put out around his vision of electrifying everything.
And then McKibben's into that now too.
Right. So we actually did an episode on Mark Jacobson during our False Prophet season. It was episode 72, Sucking CO2 and Electrifying Everything, the Climate Movement's Desperate Dependence on Tenuous Technologies. And, Naomi was really kind of touting that vision and the idea that we could basically transition the entire system to renewable energy. And I found that concerning, and I had a conversation with her about that. Sadly, she and Bill McKibben, who you just mentioned, Jason, who we were also close with for a long time, he went into deep eco-modernist territory with his most recent book. That's been a little disappointing. But the reason I wanted to pick her was because people at PCI used to joke that I had a literary crush on her. I would talk about her all the time because she's a fantastic writer.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated, at least to me, she brought a new way of understanding dynamics that I'd never considered before. And she was fearless in her naming of the need for systems change. So for example, with the book, This Changes Everything, she was basically going after capitalism and trying to say, yes, this is actually systems change. We can't address the climate crisis without addressing the overall economic system, which is why I was dismayed by her kind of touting of the Mark Jacobson stuff, But it was the shock doctrine that really, really had an impact on my thinking. And in that book, she exposes the neoliberal playbook, right? That basically was never let a good crisis go to waste. In their case, they oftentimes would engender crises, but it was taking a moment of crisis to advance their unregulated markets vision of how the economy should be organized. And it was encapsulated by this quote from Milton Friedman, who was kind of the guru of neoliberalism, that she wrote about in her book, which is actually half of PCI's theory of change. Okay. And that quote is, only crisis, actual or perceived, produces real change. When the crisis occurs, the actions that are taken depend on the ideas that are lying around. That, I believe, is our basic function, to develop alternatives to existing policies, to keep them alive and available until the politically impossible becomes politically inevitable. So that idea is kind of half of our theory of change, in the sense that if we recognize that crises are going to happen, are happening, then there's an opportunity there. The Overton window is shifted. There's an opportunity there to advance things that are totally marginal, like ecological economics, for example, right?
Or the opposite, privatize the shit out of everything.
And of course, what we're seeing right now is the shock doctrine, disaster capitalism running on steroids because they actually have their hands on the levers of power. We don't, but we could still apply that lens to recognizing that crises are opportunities for change.
We need to talk to Ronaldo. Right. Get him on board.
Get him to create a crisis for us.
Promote our side, yes. God may smite heathens and rapture the faithful, but he is not without mercy and wants his followers to provide care for the left behind. If you're looking forward to Rapture Day and want to shine in the eyes of our Lord, then show kindness to the unfaithful by transferring your valuable earthly possessions to Rapture Assets Management. When Judgment Day comes and you are whisked to heaven, Rapture Assets Management will dutifully distribute your former possessions to unworthy sinners who are nonetheless children of God. Simply transfer title of your car, RV, home, farm, and timberland properties and receive a no-cost lease back on all assets through the rapture date of your choosing. Let Rapture Assets Management serve your need to make God glad for your benevolence and give you peace of mind that you are worthy of his everlasting glory. Rapture Assets Management is not responsible for acts of God that don't occur. Assets may be sold or leased back at market rates if the rapture fails to occur.
Okay, our second round in this draft is name a pundit who you haven't met, somebody from history, whatnot. I get to go first again. I am picking Donella Meadows, affectionately known as Dana.
Rob is just going for like the Mount Rushmore types.
I gotta go with the influencers who influenced me. I found them influential.
It's true, they are.
Dana Meadows, people in our world know her work on the Limits to Growth, so I'm still in this economy can't grow forever. Limits to Growth was a 1972 study that modeled the world and questioned what would happen if we keep consuming and growing the way that we are. I would say to our listeners, there's an awesome podcast called Tipping Point, the true story of the limits to growth that I
agree with that.
I would go listen to if you're interested. But I want to tell you guys, that's how most people know Dana Meadows, lead author of that study. I've read that book. It's really kind of wonky. I'm amazed it's such a bestseller of an enviro book.
It was really a study, right? It was a report.
Yeah, in a sense. And it's very much like trying to explain exponential growth and computer modeling and stuff like that. But what really got me with Dana Meadows was her column that she wrote for years. She actually died young, so I was reading these after she had already passed. She lived from 1941 to 2001, so 60 years. But this column she wrote, The Global Citizen, is outstanding. And I guess there's a Donella Meadows organization that sort of keeps her stories and her ideas alive. And I went through that entire archive while I was working at the Fish and Wildlife Service. I just said, okay, each day I'm going to read one of her articles as if it's new.
Wow.
And it was kind of like you were saying, Asher, with Naomi Klein. It was sort of mind-blowing for me because of the systems thinking. And that's, the kind of thinking she's become famous for. And there's a book called, of course, Thinking in Systems. I also recommend you take a look at that. But I didn't feel like I had this in any sort of training in school or anybody teaching me about systems thinking. And that book that she wrote and her columns sort of do it over the course of them, changed the way I look at the world. I see relationships more. I understand how parts of systems affect one another
You're
more.
Like Nemo, right?
Finally, the Matrix.
The Matrix.
Yes.
Neo, not Nemo.
Nemo's a fish.
Yeah.
I think that's a great one, and I agree.
The look on your face. I wish our listeners...
I'm a clownfish?
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah. I wish our listeners could see the look on Rob's face when I said Nemo.
You're like Nemo. You're like Leonard Nimoy.
I think that's a great one, Rob. And I was likewise influenced by her quite a bit. And
Yeah,
so it's a
I
great
even
one.
got some bonuses with her. She also walked the walk. She started, or at least helped start, an intentional co-housing community and lived in it.
Yeah, with a lot of students actually from the colleges.
Yeah, and that's another bonus. We hang out with Elizabeth Salwin, who runs the Multi-Solving Institute and has a book called Multi-Solving. Direct lineage. She was a student of Dana
and she
Meadows.
worked with Dana for a long time.
Yeah. So anyway, hugely influential. I think reading The Global Citizen, actually, along with Herman's stuff, kind of gave me some courage to leave the Fish and Wildlife Service. And then I went and joined an intentional community, an eco village. I'm like basically trying to follow in the footsteps of these people.
That's great.
They're pretty heavy hitters. And I knew I couldn't pick either of those, his first two, because I knew he was going to pick them. My round 2 pick is an author, Ursula Le Guin.
Oh, nice one.
Nice.
I read her a lot when I was like in high school and college, I'd say, was when I was really into reading.
She's a good flex pick because she could have been in the pop culture as a sci-fi novelist, but as also a historical figure.
Yes. I mean, what's interesting in her background is that I think her parents were academics and into anthropology. And my favorite, she had the Earthsea books, but she also had this group of books they call the Hanish series or the Hanish cycle. And my 2 most memorable books from that were The Left Hand of Darkness. And in that book, there's like humanoid beings on various planets. And there was an empire fall, and they got isolated. So they kind of evolved independently. And then in these series, they're sort of reconnecting, like technology is being rebuilt. And on this one planet, the people are hermaphrodites, and they don't know when they get into a relationship what form they're going to take, if they're going to be the one bearing the child or not. And the ecology of the planet was very different. And so there's some thought that they evolved this hermaphrodism to deal with this unique ecology. But then it gets into, what does this mean for the culture? What does it mean, for family dynamics and roles and the politics of a place? And so that book plus the book The Dispossessed, which has a moon, an inhabited moon, and an Earth-like planet that's very rich. And the moon is sort of stark and there's not much productivity ecologically, and the Earth-like planet is lush. And the different cultures that develop on the two, and the way she interwove, evolution and ecology and power dynamics and technology was really unique. And it made me sort of see these connections much better than I would have otherwise.
Yeah, I got a couple bonus thoughts on Ursula Le Guin. One, she's a Portlander, so kind of from our neck of the woods. The other is I got to see her as a keynote speaker at a conference here in Corvallis. Like any good sci-fi writer, it's all kind of based on her reality and understanding of how the world works, and she's clearly in our camp.
Yeah.
I got to say, an alternate of mine is Margaret Atwood.
Oh, yeah.
Who is
another great
kind
writer.
of similar. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Nice.
Yeah. All right, a share?
My third, okay. I chose Viktor Frankl. You guys familiar with Viktor Frankl?
Yeah, Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
Not so much.
So he was a neuroscientist, a psychiatrist who was born in 1905. He's best known for that book, Man's Search for Meaning, and also known for having been a Holocaust survivor. A lot of people assume that his book and philosophy about meaning were really born out of his experience being in concentration camps for 3 years. But in fact, he had developed his school of psychology, which he called logotherapy, and that's Greek for healing through meaning, before the war actually even started. And he was so passionate about this new field, psychotherapy, psychoanalysis. He basically stopped going to school. He was a good student, but they got really caught up in the stuff. He was taking classes in this when he was like junior high. When he was 25, he actually organized free youth counseling centers across Vienna that successfully basically took what had been an epidemic of teen suicides that tended to happen around the time report cards came out.
Wow.
And he basically, within a year, he got suicides to drop to zero. So a lot of his work was really focused on suicidal populations, basically. And he kind of argued, and I think he believed this before the war and certainly after the war, that having meaning and purpose in life was key and fundamental in people's happiness and their well-being. And without that, they were kind of lost. He wrote Man's Search for Meaning in like 9 days. right after the war. It was published in 1946 in German. He published it originally anonymously, but then he was convinced to put his name on it. It was translated into English, about 10 years later, and has sold tens of millions of copies, has been on top 100 book lists. He wrote over 30 books in his lifetime, but that is obviously the book that he's most remembered for. I read Man's Search for Meaning when I was living in LA working for the Shoah Foundation.
Right.
So I was deeply immersed in the history
Tell
of the
our
Holocaust.
listeners about the Shoah Foundation.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. So Shoah Foundation was started by Steven Spielberg, who was somebody I was actually considering putting on my list in the third bucket. Did not.
I almost put him on my list. E.T., Indiana Jones, Jaws. Are you kidding me? Totally influential.
But for me, it was after Spielberg made Schindler's List, he was getting Holocaust survivors asking him to tell their story. And he was telling them, well, send me, record yourself. And they would set themselves up and their kid would set up a video camera and it was like pointing in the other direction.
Right.
The sound quality is terrible. He's like, you know what we got to do? We just got to go and capture these stories. So he set up this project and we were doing digital recording of interviews before digital cameras existed. We had to have professional photographers do this on beta tapes, very expensive. And over the course of just a number of years, we recorded interviews with over 50,000 Holocaust survivors around the world in, 35 to 40 languages. So I was working there when I read Man's Search for Meaning, and I've tended to kind of revisit it every 5 to 10 years. It's that in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Douglas Adams, another guy, has been hugely influential in my thinking. And, I think the key thing here is that one of the things that Frankl said was that suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it finds meaning, right? And he stated that in his view, he noticed that some of the people that were able to survive the horrors of the concentration camps and the Holocaust were the ones who had a purpose, a reason to live for, right?
Every day they had to.
There was a lot of indiscriminate stuff that happened, obviously, that wasn't in people's hands completely, but those who had lost hope, those who lost a purpose, a meaning to survive for, were the ones that he saw basically not make it, and the ones that did, right? And the other thing that I think is interesting, he coined the term existential vacuum to describe kind of the meaningless that people were experiencing in their lives. I think that this is far worse now, honestly, than when he was writing about this.
Yes.
But he talked a lot about American culture and American consumerism, the sort of industrial, production model, basically politics and government on large scales taking away people's agency, and how important it was for people to find that meaning and purpose in their lives. And he actually argued for us erecting a statue of responsibility on the West Coast, on the Pacific Coast, to sort of be a balancing act to the Statue of Liberty, which is all espousing, people's individual pursuit of freedom. Anyway, so Viktor Frankl is my guy.
That's great.
I'm going to go on Amazon and see if I can buy an existential vacuum and clean things up around here.
That's a great pick.
We'd suck up all the people who were feeling existential dread.
I think this also, you have both our culture removing a lot of ways that people found meaning. And then you have the idea, if you get into sort of the great unraveling of modernity going away. And so I think people are getting a double whammy, right? Even the pathetic thing we have now that gives us some meaning is even maybe going away. And what culture is left? What should I think people are really struggling with this, who also kind of in our camp. So I think that's a really neat
it's
one.
why I certainly brought it into my thinking about our work together, right? Is that I think part of, people ask us, is there any hope? That sometimes people fall into fatalism,
right.
nihilism or whatever. And what we try to do is not give people false hope,
right?
But I think giving people a sense that you do have some agency, in this is the thing that can keep you going. It's the thing that keeps me going, frankly.
Yeah, there's always resistance. There's always little projects to work on to make things better.
There's always just finding the people you love and the place that you can feel at home at and just enjoy what life you have, and not being always dragged down by, the threats you see.
Yeah.
If you can find your place of sanity and coherence, even when there's a lot of craziness around
and people have survived the most unspeakable things.
Right.
We love hearing from listeners who are doing good work out there in the world. And we hope that maybe you'll find some inspiration in examples like this one. Liza got in touch with us to let us know that she actually uses Crazy Town episodes as a sort of magical antidote to buying stuff.
Oh, neat.
Because she just gets nauseous when she hears our voice, and then she's like, I just can't.
I can't leave the house.
Right.
Or I can't turn on the computer.
Yeah,
It's like she just like curls up in a ball.
It's like one of those Clockwork Orange remedies, like you get sick to your stomach when you hear us.
Exactly.
Oh, God.
No, she said she was kind of stuck in a consumerist mindset and just buying stuff. And she said she had some like rationalizations for it, even like, oh, if I'm thrifting or if I'm buying secondhand, then that's not harmful. But she kind of realized she was overdoing it and was listening to things like our friend Alex Leff's Human Nature Odyssey, Nate Hagen's Great Simplification, and of course us here in Crazy Town. And she said when she would get the urge to buy stuff, she would put on an episode and it would kind of like stop her from going.
That's great.
I don't know how I feel about this. Like,
That's fantastic.
okay, so you see it as a positive. I just think like she's just so horrified and.
I was amazed. I actually wrote her an email and we got in touch with each other. And she's thinking about maybe trying to write about this a little
cool.
bit. And so, yeah, that's really, really awesome.
I appreciate the honesty, like self-honesty, but then
Yes.
also like
Awareness.
being able to share that, because I think we all deal with these. I don't know. It's like this. None of us are purists
Right.
in what we're experiencing, right? And the choices that we make.
Right.
I mean, I came here in my Hummer.
Of course I did.
I thought you came here in a flexible flyer, sort of red wagon with two blowers pointed out the back.
Actually, that'd be kind of fun to try.
This weekend I was riding my jet ski up and down the Marys River.
All right, that's enough of that. So please, listeners, let us know if you're doing something in service of people and planet, and leave a comment in your podcast app, or get in touch with us directly by emailing crazytown@postcarbon.org. Okay, thanks for round 2. Round 3.
Ding, 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 ding.
Wow, we got a ding ding
like boxing,
sound
yeah.
effect there. Yeah,
It's come out from your corner.
outstanding. Yeah, you should take your shirt off, put on a bikini, and walk around the ring with a 3, Jason.
That would be great. Thong bikini.
Round 3 is someone real or fictitious from pop culture. I thought about this quite a bit, and I knew I had to go comedian.
Oh.
Okay, so in the past, I've called George
Gallagher.
Carlin. Yeah, Gallagher.
Gallagher.
Carrot Top. Right?
Yeah. I got a watermelon downstairs if you need something.
I'm going to smash it with a very big hammer. I called George Carlin the patron saint of Crazy Town, mostly for his classic bit about stuff and where to put it
I
all.
was thinking about George Carlin for mine.
Well, he's not mine, and it's not Bill Burr either, who's got some classic bits, like the one where he sees a family portrait and it's got the generations and he calls it an environmental disaster. But
Or his solution to overpopulation is sinking cruise ships.
right, blowing up cruise ships, like no one's gonna miss them. We'll just put fake plastic ones out there on the sea.
Icon of the seas, baby.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
I'm gonna go with another Bill, the late great Bill Hicks.
Oh, yeah.
You guys know him?
I do.
I don't know him that well, honestly.
So one of the reasons you don't know him well is he died really young.
yeah.
This is kind of like a sad trend in my picks here. Herman lived a long, full life. Dana was kind of cut short while she still had many productive years. And Bill Hicks died at 32 years old.
Wow.
The main thing about, I'm not going to do bits of his, but he questioned the American dream. He really questioned marketing and advertising. He had a whole bit about if you're in marketing or advertising, kill yourself. It's not a joke, But
he should just send them to Viktor Frankl.
yeah, I think even more important for me is that he was a truth seeker and a truth teller, and just was not afraid to get up there on stage by his lonesome and tell the truth and do it with humor, but also force. And I realize in going back to it now as a 50-year-old person, looking at clips of him doing his routines at the time that I would have been in college, roughly, I was like, I think a lot of this really seeped into my brain and how I think. And of course, the humor piece is huge. I've always thought if you're going to address difficult topics, if you can do so with humor, it's just so much better.
Well, it's interesting to think about how, it's the comedians that are really pushing back right now on what's going on in the U.S. is better than almost anybody. And also look at what like Governor Newsom is doing and how that's
humor.
becoming like the thing where it's suddenly like, oh, we've got something to get behind.
What is he doing?
Oh, he's got his social media account is trolling Trump by actually mimicking Trump. So he's talking about how the great,
in all caps
the best governor of all time, the most popular and handsome, statesman in the United, and just mimicking exactly what Trump is doing, but pretending Gavin Newsom, am the greatest, and he's got like red hats that say, Newsom was right about everything.
Well, Bill Hicks saw all of this coming and was railing on all of this. And I can't even imagine, had he survived, he'd be kind of like what Carlin became, the elder statesman in the comedy world. He would be spinning around in his grave right now. But if he were still alive, the commentaries on all this would have been...
Oh, yeah, for sure. It reminds me of Steve Cutts, who wasn't on my list, but is worth a mention too. And he's an animator, right? He does illustrations, he does animated videos, some dark shit, but they're very, very pointed about what he sees in consumer culture and technology and politics. He has this great. This is before Trump, I think, won. He had this great illustration he created with portraits of presidents in future years, right? And he had Donald Trump in there, and he had Kanye in there. He had a brick, he had a sandwich. Just the devolution, of our politics.
Right.
We need those people. We really do.
I would personally prefer a sandwich to Trump. That would be awesome if we had a sandwich.
Yes. Yeah, even when I couldn't eat.
Okay.
All right, Jason, your round 3 pick.
Okay, so mine is not a real person. It's a fictional, and actually it's not even a human. It's a halfling.
Oh.
Frodo Baggins.
Oh, Frodo.
Yes, Frodo Baggins. I know, everyone's like,
Frodo, not Bilbo.
No, Frodo. I mean, Bilbo's great too, of course, but Frodo was the one that did a better job than Bilbo, actually, of not succumbing to the power. Yeah. Like the big deal about
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. the big deal
it's about a ring, people.
About Frodo was that you have this ring of power and he doesn't want it. And it's like the wizard, the elves that are really powerful, they're terrified of this ring because they know if they get it, they could turn them into monsters. But Frodo, as a halfling, they know that the characteristics of these humble creatures who are adorable, they're less likely to go power crazy. And so they trusted the halfling to carry that ring and then to throw the power away. So just this story of somebody who understands that one of the most important things we can do is actually dismiss this urge to get more for ourselves, to be more powerful, to be the center of attention.
That's a really good point, Jason. I thought about putting J.R.R. Tolkien
How many R's
on my list, but I realized I didn't read those books until quite a bit later in life. I was probably 30 years old the first time I read them.
I was probably too.
But you're hitting the point exactly, and the reason that I almost included it is this. I don't have to grab so much power. And actually, our colleague Richard Heinberg wrote a whole book about this, and it's all about the different forms of power and how if we want to get to a sustainable society, we've got to be willing to give up that power. And it always amazes me how these professors and writers of old kind of got these concepts even before this modernity shit show of too much energy, too much consumption, too much throughput.
And I think, there's also the idea that, it's a little trope with me right now, that the Shire, like the fact that he's living this life in Hobbiton where they're this sort of, peaceful agrarian folks, in the contrast to, the industrial maw of Sauron and Mordor that is felling the forests and mining and creating all the swords. So once again, it's not just the individual, but that story represents like beings with one way of life that is peaceful and cares for the earth, and this other way of life that is highly destructive and warlike. And what society would you rather be part of? I also like that in his journey, his friends help him along. And there's humor in it too. So it's fun to read because you go between them talking about these things that are rather mundane, but able to joke around and observe the beauty of nature. And then there's some trauma and crisis, and then they have to console each other and figure out how to move on in the face of these terrible fears they have. So I think all of that is really, of course, applies to today.
Not to be a Debbie Downer here for a second, but I want to just point out that
Debbie Downer is a Cher's third pick in this draft.
The most influential character on my life, for sure. No, it's just an observation, which is that series, right? So powerful and I think so influential for many people. Our friend Phil, for example, I know it's like deeply meaningful for him, that book series, and also Peter Thiel.
Oh, yeah, interesting.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, Peter Thiel named his company Palantir after,
Well, because he wants to be Sauron
but
and sit at the top of a dark tower.
This is my point.
They don't get it.
Yeah.
They don't get it.
They either don't get it or I don't know what it is. But it's interesting that art can influence people in surprising ways and maybe they get different lessons from it. But I agree with what your takeaways are, obviously.
Yeah.
I also have to say, when I read the book, I thought of Samwise Gamgee as the head hero.
Yeah.
Even more of the sort of servant and nature guy. A Cher?
Okay. I'm going a little different here, and I didn't even write any notes for myself because I'm actually channeling one of the reasons I'm picking this.
I don't have any notes for Frodo. Look at that.
Okay, look at you.
Wow.
Yeah.
On the one level, you're not going to be surprised. On another level, just be patient while I explain why. Okay. So I'm picking the Grateful Dead.
Yeah. I know. I get it.
But the reason is. So here I am improvising.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This my little explanation. There are aspects. You don't even have to like the music. If you're interested in learning about the music, just reach out, crazytown@postcarbon.org. I'll put you on a path. But
I'll talk about tennis anytime you want to.
Our actual topics need the boosting, not the Grateful Dead.
Right.
Yeah.
They have plenty of fans.
For me, it's birds and tennis. If you want to talk to me about that, go ahead. Just Crazy Town.
Who wants to discuss 80s movies?
This is going to be a popularity contest. Yeah. Here's the reason. Okay, so the whole spirit of the Grateful Dead was 6, sometimes it was 7 musicians who would improvise together. It's not like traditional jazz where you improvise, where somebody would take a solo, the rest of the band was basically playing off, playing the tune, right, and supporting that role. For the Grateful Dead, in a lot of moments, it was literally an improvisation of 6 or 7 people making music together at the same time.
And sometimes it didn't even seem like music.
Sometimes it didn't work.
Right.
And that's part of the beauty. I'm serious about the lessons here.
Yeah.
There are moments that they would chase, of like being perfectly in sync with one another.
Right.
And people have talked about this as a flow state, but try to imagine doing a flow state with 6 other people at the same time, right? And that they had an audience that was there for it. They were there for them to sound like shit sometimes. They were there for the moments, right? And they were with them, and the band was responding to the energy, which is why they played live all the time. They had a spirit of generosity and giving. They let people record their shows from the early 70s.
Right. Yeah, they didn't care.
Just do it.
They're
They
all
put
out
it out there,
Yeah.
right? And there was something about the flow of the music, which would go from light to darkness, back to light, where it would feel like every show in some ways was its own story that was being woven there, never the same show twice. And you go through these highs and lows emotionally. That to me is what life is, right? So you have these people creating this life journey in front of other people. You don't know where you're going to go. And there's also the spirit of generosity that went into the culture of the Grateful Dead fans, where, like I was saying about a journey, I had people take me on a journey of learning the music, and I would do that for other people.
Yeah.
And so when I think about something like the values that we need to carry us forward. I'm going to sound like hopey dopey here, but
You're not Debbie Downer.
is a spirit of improvisation. It's collaboration and community. It's a spirit of giving, right? And it's about embracing the light and darkness at the same time, And so I obviously love the Grateful Dead because I love the music, but I also love what the Grateful Dead represented and an amalgamation and a mashup of all these different forms of music that they brought in together.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's my spiel.
That's great. And also, what I think is they were truly an incredible set of American artists that were emerged from this amazing period in history.
Totally.
I find that, this is what also I find amazing to be in our culture. We're so down on our culture a lot, like all three of us.
Yeah.
And there's so much to feel shitty about our culture. But then you've got Steven Spielberg and E.T., right?
Right.
Okay. And you've got the Grateful Dead, right? You've got things that you can still go, wow, look what we did as a culture. It's not all horrible. There's some things we can still love and appreciate.
Viktor Frankl would have found meaning in E.T. and in the Grateful Dead.
I'm sure he would have.
Okay, well, 3 rounds in the book, but I was wondering if we could also bring up a few folks that maybe you were considering and just some other ideas maybe. And listeners, please, if you have people that influenced you and your way of thinking, let us know. Send us a note at crazytown@postcarbon.org or put it in your podcast app in the comments there. We'd love to see it and share it. But let me just say, one person that I almost had for round 2 on the sort of historical, Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah.
I was so in love with that man as a child. I loved listening to his speeches. I didn't realize, I was born in 1971. Some of those civil rights type legislation laws were just passed a few years before I was born.
It is incredible.
I was living in Georgia. We've had episodes where I've talked about I was born in Stone Mountain, basically right under that carving on Stone Mountain of Robert E. Lee, Jefferson Davis, and what's the other? Stonewall Jackson, these Confederate dudes. And I just remember reading and hearing about MLK and just thinking how courageous, but in service of just something so fair, so obvious.
So obvious. And I think you notice how we didn't have African Americans until this honorable mention. We had fewer women than men. And I think, this is a hard thing to do. We have to acknowledge that we grew up in a time where, 70s and 80s America there was a lot less diversity celebrated.
Yeah.
There was a lot less of that taught in schools. And I think if you were to look at school history books nowadays, at least in certain states, I don't know.
Well, we're making America great again by going back to having textbooks and things that are only about white men.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
I really appreciate you bringing that up, Jason, because I was actually thinking about how much of late I've been really into the mashup between indigenous culture and modern ecological science and just thinking about who's the indigenous influencer. And it's we lost them all to history. I'm sure there are some I could find today, but
they don't just pop into our head as opposed.
I didn't study them as a kid, right? So, do you guys have some?
Oh, I have another old white guy, Colin Campbell.
Yeah. Colin.
Well, Colin was actually a petroleum geologist. Can you believe this? Why would a petroleum geologist? Because he was also a follower of M. King Hubbard, another petroleum geologist. The whole idea of peak oil, Colin Campbell kind of resurrected that in the 90s and continued on into the early 2000s. He died probably 20 years ago now.
So just looking at the societal consequences of
running out of resources, kind of a limit. It's kind of take limits to growth, but hone in on maybe what you might call a key resource. And Colin was very good about talking about this and why oil was like a linchpin, and very much influenced me, I would say, early 2000s. And he was seemed like a gentle, humble person. Mm-hmm. I just like his demeanor and the way he talked about it.
Yeah.
And he essentially was very calmly sort of explaining, we're probably going to go back to a society based on biomass. These fossil fuels are going to run out. And he kind of had this old man sort of persona of late in my life, I can just say these things and very matter-of-factly without much drama. And it really hit well,
Yeah. Yeah, I was in my limits to growth realm and did not list E.F. or Fritz Schumacher as one of mine, but he's a obvious choice, having written Small is Beautiful and being incredibly influential. Jason, little disappointed that you haven't mentioned the duo of Wendell Berry and Wes Jackson as the farm guy over here.
Yeah. I would say Wendell Berry and Wes Jackson would be the two like elder statesmen of that definitely were on my mind a little bit. But I think I found them a little bit later than some of these other influences. And
I just, rather than naming other people, I want to, I guess, second what you had said, Jason, around folks that maybe we're not mentioning or we're not even aware of. And I just think about like the wisdom and the influences that are in other cultures and other parts of the world that we're not aware of.
Yeah.
That
like Ronaldo.
Like Ronaldo. That was the person that was coming to mind.
Or Messi, if you're Argentinian.
Messi. This is your form of diversity. Yeah. It makes me hungry to want to be exposed, to other, thinking about like some Indian writers, Amitav Ghosh, for example, and some others that I've gotten to become aware of more recently. But I'm sure there's so many out there, that would I wish had the light shined on them a bit.
Yeah, that would have been sweet.
It'd be interesting to hear from our listeners, if they're folks that, I'm sure they're folks that we didn't mention. They're like, why aren't you saying this person?
Oh my God, Dr. Seuss, the Lorax, Star-Bellied Sneetches, the Yes Men, Jim Henson, for crying out loud.
Richard Heinberg.
Yeah. So many good influential people, and Kylie Jenner and Selena Gomez, of course.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for sharing. I really actually kind of touched by some of the things you said today.
I thought this was going to be I thought it was a lousy idea when you came up with it.
Thanks.
But then I realized we actually did all right. It was all right.
Don't let the good be the enemy of the mediocre.
Exactly.
So set the bar low.
That's our show. Thanks for listening. If you like what you heard and you want others to consider these issues, then please share Crazy Town with your friends. Hit that share button in your podcast app or just tell them face to face. Maybe you can start some much needed conversations and do some things together to get us out of Crazy Town. Thanks again for listening and sharing.
Crazy Town, da 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 da, Crazy Town.